delicious. Well, welcome everyone to this another Hobby Rocks cast where we finally get a chance to sit down and have an interview with Lawrence, aka the Spider, aka the Director. I liked that one that you guys released while I was away.
Yeah.
It was very like this. It was a powerful name.
It was powerful.
It was a powerful name, but also your job title. So,
it's actually
makes
true,
sense.
yeah.
So, we are almost through. The last person to be interviewed will be myself.
Yeah.
Subject to popular demand, lots of people have been requesting that I actually interview myself.
Yes, I've seen that.
Yes.
Yeah. That would be interesting.
Yes, we're considering it. I'm not going to say no.
We're definitely not going to film it after this one.
That's for sure. But I'm not going to say yes either. We'll just have to see how it goes. All right? We'll roll those dice in a minute.
Yeah.
But it is not about me. It is about you today, Lawrence. So good to have you here. You've been super busy the last, year really, getting everything up and running. There's been a whole bunch of things that happened, and we're going to touch a bit on that as well. But mainly we're going to talk about the hobby for you and what brought you into it, and all that sort of general information.
Crazy.
The backstory.
I'm very excited.
I'm very excited.
Okay.
I'm very excited. So we're going to start with the first question, and I've done this properly today. I've actually written down a bunch of questions here.
No crazy. So
Yeah.
It's actually bought a question list.
It's the
so this is really an interrogation, not an interview, isn't it?
pretty much.
The stakes have been raised.
Yeah,
for an
exactly.
interview
What
with
are
the
the
Spider.
passwords to the computers? Is my first question.
I will end your life.
Awesome. All right, well, let's start off with the first one. So how did you come to the hobby?
Right, how did I come to the hobby? So, I sort of discovered Warhammer Fantasy first. I was also vaguely aware of Dungeons and Dragons almost at the same time. I can't quite remember which I discovered first. It was very, very close together. But what I do remember is the first thing that I ever got bought for me, which was like hobby related. And it was an issue of White Dwarf.
Cool.
And it was the issue with a yellow cover. It's one of those nostalgic moments you just don't forget, imprinted in your mind. Yellow cover with an orc boar rider.
And that's cool.
Yeah, and it had a battle report with Jervis Johnson. I can't remember the other guy's name now. I think it was Andy Chambers. Obviously, I do remember Andy Chambers, everyone, but I don't think he was playing Andy Chambers in this report. It was someone else. It might have been like Robin Dews or something. He was one of the early developers. Anyway.
Right.
I had this amazing battle report. Jervis, of course, lost. He always did back then. I think he still does.
A man after my own heart.
But they had the great preamble blurb beforehand. They built it up narratively, and then they also ended with a narrative as well. So it was kind of like they were like narrative reports back then, And you see this beautiful boards with all the goblin green bases and the orcs and all of the regiments, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is so cool. And as it happens, because I was with my godfather at the time, we were walking in this shop and I just sort of saw it and I was like, oh, can I have this? As a kid does. And I didn't see any more White Dwarfs because it wasn't actually at my local newsagent. We were off somewhere else. I don't know what we were doing.
Right.
And I didn't see any more White Dwarfs for like several months. But then as the years went by, every time I saw one, I would always want one. And I was very young at this point. I was like 6 years old, right?
Yeah.
And then as it happened, when I was about 9, when I was in primary school, one of the brothers of one of the girls in my year had given her some of his old miniatures, and it happened to be an Elder Dreadnought.
Of course.
So it's called a Wraithlord. It's called a Dreadnought back then, but now it's a Wraithlord, of course.
Yeah.
And it's painted actually really quite well. And I was like, that's amazing. And it was Claudia, her name was. She revealed to me that where you finally get these things, because I'd never...
So she was the gatekeeper.
She was the gatekeeper. Yeah, exactly. And she revealed that there's a shop that does this called Games Workshop on Oxford Street in London. And I was like, I'm going immediately.
So I bumped off the rest of school.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Back then, you've got to bear in mind, this is pre-internet, really. The internet did exist, but I think I had like a 286 computer, and that was considered quite lucky to even have that.
Right.
And it certainly didn't connect to the internet. you know. And when we eventually did get internet, which is when I was like 13 years old, 14, it was like.
Yeah, and you'd spend 15 minutes downloading that one picture from the Games Workshop website.
Correct.
I remember doing that.
Yeah. And there was a lot of watching the folder being opened and like a little document flying through the air to go into the folder. Do you remember that?
Yes.
When you were trying to download something? It was like 0.5 MB.
Yeah.
And it took you 5 hours.
It takes so long. And then you'd leave it, and then you'd come back, and your parents had clicked off on it because they'd wanted to do something else.
That's right, you have to start the whole thing again.
You have to start the whole thing again, and you'd be like, Mom!
Yeah.
And she'd be like, what?
Yeah.
And it was a whole conversation.
Yeah, that was the dark age of technology.
Yeah. We're now in the Enlightenment,
I don't know.
I don't know.
But anyway, to cut a long story short, I found someone who knew where to get these miniatures, because I looked for them, because obviously I wanted the miniatures right away, and I'd looked for them, I'd searched for them in toy shops and that. Didn't know, you know, I went, do you do Games Workshop? They're like, get out of here, kid. Just like, okay.
You know? That's fair enough.
So, you know, I finally found the shop, and then it was still a few months before I could finally get my mum to take me down to this Games Workshop on a Saturday. And yeah, we got there, and, you know, I loved it. And I got like a little box. I think it was like the plastic orcs, which had like the circular shields and the...
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so it was fantasy
It was fantasy to start with,
and
I loved the 40k stuff. I really did. I immediately loved that as well. But it was actually the Warhammer Fantasy which I first started picking up. Now I didn't get the rules, and I went into the Games Workshop a few times, and obviously I think about 10 I just started walking into town myself.
Yeah.
So I'd go every Saturday, and I'd save up my pocket money, which would usually take me, you know, about a month to get a single box.
Yeah.
And that would be the cheapest box that they did.
Of course.
Like a £5 box back then.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd slowly build up this collection, but I didn't know the rules, and I didn't really have anyone to play with that also had the miniatures. So it didn't really go anywhere, you know, until I was about 12. It's becoming like a life story now.
Well, no, it's pretty good, because the next question was, what has your hobby journey been like? So we'll just keep going. Just keep going. Yeah, because we were going to get to this anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. And
then now to answer your second question.
Yeah, which I'm glad I said. I should just let you go.
You should have, really.
Because then I could have just picked that and started like crossing it off.
So anyway, so then basically George came along. So an old friend, George, and we were about 12 years old, and I built up a little collection of these miniatures, you know, over time. And what we ended up doing was he got some miniatures because he was like, oh, what's that? That's really cool. And he got some. And we basically made up our own rules.
Yeah.
We literally made up, and we became quite good because we'd have rules where you'd have to guess the range.
Right.
Because we saw when we went into a shop that people were using tape measures and dice, but we didn't know what, you know. We saw the rule book, which when we first started, it was like Rogue Trader, and it was like a tome, and you're like, I'm a kid, I can't read that.
Yeah. Reading wasn't my strong point at that point in my life. Anyway.
So, you know, we made up our rules, and we were like, right, on a 4, 5, and 6, that will hit you, and then you can try and save on a 4, 5. No, we'd have all our own silly rules, but you'd have to guess the exact range, otherwise you couldn't even roll to hit.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we got really good at guessing ranges.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really good at it. And actually, that was kind of the tactics. That was like the first seed of tactics coming into play, because we were quite keen, because George was always ultra competitive.
Yeah.
And actually, I was always pretty competitive, but I liked all of the different aspects. Like, I loved the narrative as well, and I loved the painting side of it. I was kind of like an all-rounder, but I loved the finesse of playing well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the tactics started. And then eventually, I think I was about 13, we got the second edition of Warhammer 40,000 had been released.
Yep.
Earlier that year, the box set with goblins and grots and orcs and ultramarines.
I remember they were all like this.
That's right.
That was my first box
set. Yeah, that's what we got, and then we actually read the rules and I actually understood them, and that's where we started playing. And then basically, you know, it continued that way, and I was playing right up through to probably about 20 years old. I had like a gap of a year and a half. Then I'd worked at Games Workshop. when I was 18, between 18 and 20. Then I went for some travelling in Australia for a year. I did some extra work in Australia for Games Workshop, funnily enough. And the plan actually always was to be an actor. So that sort of leads into probably where we might end up going into other questions. But basically, I sort of dropped out of the hobby, actually.
Yeah.
So by the time I was 21, I just travelled around Australia. I ended up leaving Games Workshop, and then I went to university. And then I didn't really touch the hobby at all for years. Until really I met you.
Yeah, then we got back into it. Well, I want to delve into that a bit more in just a second. One of our cameras is flicking though, so we're going to be back in just a sec. Maybe grab yourself a cup of tea. We're enjoying ours. We'll be right back. Right, welcome back. Sorry about that little interlude. Technology. And we said we weren't in the Dark Ages anymore. So we left off where we had just met. So we're at drama school.
That's right.
And what was your journey? Because look, I'm going to be honest. When we were at drama school, you didn't tell me that you played Warhammer.
Well, I wasn't. It was true.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
At that point, it just wasn't going on.
No, you know. So I mean, I think I was 26 when I got into drama school. No, 20. No, I couldn't have been. I was younger than that.
Because I was 21 or 2.
Yeah, so I was like 23, 24, something like that. That makes sense. I think it was about 26, 27 when I graduated, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Oh, wow.
So anyway.
Yeah, no, I was 23 when I graduated. That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I wasn't playing at the time because I had gone travelling. I was around Australia, done a bit of work for Games Workshop before leaving, and the plan was to always come back and audition for some of the big drama schools in England. And actually, with hindsight, that probably, from an acting point of view, that probably would have been a better choice. Not necessarily, but probably.
Yeah.
So I went to the drama school, and it kind of happened by accident. I was due to go back, and it was audition season. And I was with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and I was like, maybe I should just audition, because that would be... why not? You know, like, why not?
Yeah.
I'm kind of like that. I'm like, if I get an idea in my head, I just go for it, because there's no point not trying. I think the worst thing is to not try. Yeah. Because then you can regret. I don't like having regrets. I don't have time for regrets. Yeah. That's not how I roll. So I just give it a go. And so I auditioned, and I went and bloody got in, didn't I? That was the problem. So then I was stuck in Australia. Pretty nice place to be stuck, to be fair. Yeah. So went into drama school. Moved to Sydney, and I was staying sort of further down south in New South Wales before that, and met you. Wasn't playing Warhammer, but the one thing that I was doing is I was playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes,
I was playing Dungeons and Dragons pretty much the whole time in Australia, because very quickly when I moved to Australia, I met another old friend of mine, who's also called Ben, funnily enough. And I ran a campaign for him and a couple of other friends, and they loved it. And then he ran one, and that was all sort of ongoing whilst I was at drama school. So once a week at drama school, usually it would end up being like once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because you couldn't get everyone together at the same time. Yeah. But we would sort of continue the Dungeons and Dragons. And to be completely honest with you, I just was completely broke. I couldn't afford Games Workshop Warhammer stuff whilst I was at uni. There was just no way. No. I was lucky if I had a piece of bread. Very lucky. Yeah.
We always had money for beer, though.
Yes. Well, that was the priority.
Actors. The worst humans.
Unfortunately, nothing has changed. It's not a recommended life choice, by the way. No.
If I could talk to my past, the tales I would tell.
Yeah, exactly. Warhammer it's not that I didn't like it anymore. It's just, I was full-time at university, working part-time other places to pay my way through. And Dungeons and Dragons is great because it's a game which is actually very, very cheap to play. You don't actually need anything else other than a piece of paper and a pencil, really, and some dice. Yeah. And obviously your core books. But You know, you can put as much money into it as you want, but actually it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a better experience.
No.
The best thing about role-playing games, in my experience, has always been that if you've got the right group, the right dynamic, and you've got a great DM or great story, then it will work regardless of how many books you've got, you know, or whether you've got fancy dice or whether you've got like great scenery or miniatures, because you don't need, those are affectations. They're bonuses, you don't need them. So
100%.
we just we had like a crate of beer and that was it. We'd just play one, you know, once every week if possible. So I played the whole way through, and then towards the end of drama school, because it basically, I don't know how it came up. I never hid it. It just wasn't something you would talk about generally, because most people back then, D&D was obviously known, but it wasn't like it is known today, because things like shows like Game of Thrones and Stranger Things have actually sort of propelled it. People like Vin Diesel playing it, you know, they've sort of propelled it into being this sort of like chic geek. It's like almost,
and the rise of the
almost
hipster.
mainstream, like, you know, like in London even a few months ago, when before we moved to Bath, I remember going into a Brewdog, and there's like a bunch of guys sitting around the table in this pub, and Brewdog's like a very trendy pub in the UK, in London, just playing Dungeons and Dragons. Now let me tell you, growing up as a kid, that would just not happen.
No.
You know,
It would not.
just wouldn't happen. You know, so it's very different. The perception on it's very different now, and I just didn't speak about it because most people didn't know what it was, and so it just didn't come up. But somehow someone had asked. Yeah, it was like there was a party or something. Oh, are you coming out to the party, Lawrence? I was like, no, I can't. I'm actually meeting a bunch of friends, and we're doing a games night. And they're like, I think it was actually Maddie. She goes, what do you mean a games night? And I said, well, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. She was like, oh my God, I want to play that. I'm like, oh, really? You know what D&D is? And, you know, it was really, really cool. And so it's sort of, I think with drama school, any sort of confined environment with, you know, 20 to 25 individuals, the word spreads like wildfire.
Well, we were all at the same party.
Yeah,
I probably came in and had something to say to you about it.
Probably, yeah. So, Lawrence plays Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, yeah.
Secretly going.
Yeah, and the great thing is that I was probably, it's fair to say, the biggest guy in the class, me and Matt Hopkins. So no one's going to bully me as far as I was concerned.
Sure.
So, you know, I was feeling quite confident.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was it, really. Nothing really came of it.
No.
You were quite curious about it. You're like, oh, okay, so what is that? Because you always liked your fantasy and sci-fi.
Loved it. And then I've always been a geek. Like a huge one.
Well, it was at that point that you revealed to me, and I think it must have been towards the end of first year or something. You revealed, oh well, I used to play Warhammer. And I was like, oh yeah, I know Warhammer. I played that a lot, you know. Even when I used to work for the company, you're like, yeah, and I had like the Ultramarines. I was an assassin once. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it was cool.
And I said, well, maybe you'd like D&D then. You're like, yeah, maybe. And then that was that.
That was that.
And then we didn't do anything until actually we just finished drama school.
Yeah, I remember it.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to have a little swig of the old coffee here.
Yeah, enjoy that. I made that for you. Was it all right?
That's great. See, that's perfect, actually.
Did you like that?
Listen, that's a perfect coffee.
That's all right.
And I'm a bit of a coffee addict. I'll probably have 5 or 6 a day.
I know. Yeah, I don't drink coffee anymore.
No, you have tea instead.
I have a herbal tea. No caffeine for me. Can you imagine me on caffeine?
I don't have to imagine. I witnessed it. And that's why you're no longer on caffeine.
It was written into my contract.
Yeah, no caffeine.
No caffeine. Sorry, Ben.
It's like one of those illegal performance enhancers.
Yes.
You know, it's a banned substance for you.
Yeah, for me. Yeah, exactly.
Banned substance for them. So anyway, basically I said, look, do you want to play?
Yep.
We've got an opening. An opening in our elite group.
Elite group.
It was an elite group.
It was an elite group.
It was an elite group because basically, moving to Sydney, it became more and more difficult to get down south to play with a couple of the other guys that we used to play with.
Yeah.
But one of the guys, Matt Canay, who played with us, and Ben O'Rourke, they were in Sydney, so it was very easy, and we had an opportunity to play basically at Matt's or Ben's place, and it could alternate.
Ben, it was really cool. So Ben lived above a haunted pub.
Yes.
and it was literally haunted.
Yeah.
There was like some really creepy things that would go on.
Yeah, really creepy.
Like, I remember once we were doing this, someone was doing this epic monologue about necromancy.
Yeah.
And like they just finished and it was like this dramatic pause. It was the middle of summer, no wind, all the windows were closed. And then just right behind me, a picture just fell off the wall and shattered on the ground.
Like it was messed up.
Ghosts.
Yeah.
Ghosts.
And the thing is, so I lived in that.
Yeah, I know you did.
It
explains a lot.
Yeah, nearly 9 months. I split up from my ex-girlfriend and I moved in with Ben. And yeah, we were there for 9 months. And there was the pub, because these were basically places above the pub.
Yeah.
The owners of the pub said that the story went that there was a ghost in the cellar.
There was?
Yeah. And so that people had said that some funny things had been happening. It was a weird old place.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. A great place to do Dungeons and Dragons.
No, it was, actually. And so look, I invited you along, and you were like, oh yeah, maybe, no, and you sort of ummed and ahed, and then eventually you were like, yeah. I mean, you tried to make out like, no, I'm cool. You tried to make that out, but it was like, Ben, you're actually not cool.
I'm very cool.
So just come and play the game you obviously want to play, and actually that will make you cooler playing the game.
Which is not why I went.
Because the coolest thing is when you just embrace what you like. Because that is actually really cool.
Yeah, it's the coolest.
So just took you a little while, didn't it?
Yeah,
it took you a little while.
Well, I was in a weird spot in my life. Look, we don't need to. We might talk about that when I'm interviewing myself. Oh, that would get weird. That spiral, that's a different kind of Voxcast.
Yes.
But so we started playing, and that's when Sanger came along as well.
Yeah. So concurrently with talking to you, because Sanger was in the same year as us in drama school, so we were all sort of friends in drama school, and I invited Sanger as well because he had sort of ventured an interest, and he was quite into sort of fantasy science fiction stuff, but he had never played anything before.
Yeah.
So that was, he might have just not liked it. But the thing is, with most actors, because they've got an imagination, that most actors actually do like it.
Love it.
Yeah, so we went, okay, fine. So you two came along, and I ran the campaign. Yeah. I ran My World and Seed. Perhaps we'll do one. I'll run one in the future. And the first session, you were just in. Yeah. Like both you and Rob, you just loved it. Yeah. You're like, this is great. Yeah. All right. Yeah. No, I told you. That's
where I played Cadmus Bane.
That's right.
That's where he's from. That first campaign.
That's it. Yeah. And so that was the beginning of the sort of the reignition of the hobby journey in a way, because what that ended up happening was planting some seeds for Warhammer. Yeah. So we didn't play any Warhammer in Sydney, and as it turned out, I ended up moving back to the UK. Mm-hmm. You ended up moving to the UK, went to another drama school. You did some further study, didn't you? Mm-hmm. I was basically, we're getting into like quite a personal sort of world, but it will feed into how this came about. So I'll
the next question.
What is the next question?
Well, I've got a feeling you probably know. You've got to know, because the next question is, what is the moment you decided you wanted to make a wargaming channel?
Well, this is perfect.
I feel like we're on the way there.
It's an actual story.
But I'm going to ask my questions because I wrote them down.
I tell you what. Let me take this. What we'll do? I'll take a swig of this.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the question properly.
Okay. Right? Oh, okay. So I'll pretend that you haven't asked it.
So obviously we've heard a lot about the journey that you've been on and everything. Yeah. Now, it was a pretty great journey. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Look, it was good.
There was lots going on. But what was the moment you decided that you wanted to make a wargaming channel?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. Actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, let me have a little think about it.
Okay, please. I'm going to have a sip of my drink.
Right. So what was the moment? So there was a very specific moment, because it was a knife edge, really, and it wasn't an accident, but it kind of happened by accident. So I had been, when I finished drama school, it was safe to say I was actually doing quite well as an actor. I'd done several adverts, I'd done a stint on a TV series for one episode, I did a bunch of short films, and it was all paid work, and I actually paid off my my uni debt, you know, with the adverts and so forth. And I was like, okay, well, this is actually going quite well. And I was doing all right. And I was very lucky. I'd gotten a really good agent in Australia. But the problem with Australia is the film industry there is they only make, you know, 7 to 10 films a year, features a year.
Oh, you're being generous.
And that's generous, exactly, as I was about to say. And a lot of those would be like super low budget indie, which will never make mainstream cinema, you know, sort of thing.
It's slightly different now as well, with like Netflix are out there now doing stuff, and there's more series happening and all that sort of stuff. But at the time,
it wasn't
not much happening.
No, in fact, and the funny thing is, you turned on Australian TV at the time. I don't know what it's like now. I haven't lived there for years, but most of the TV would actually be American series.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, there wasn't actually that much being made in Australia.
It's a bit better now.
Yeah, cool.
It's a bit better.
So what that meant is there was a very limited amount of work for the actors that finally got their foot in the door to do regular work. You know, there's plenty of advert work and all that sort of stuff, and you could do maybe some stuff in New Zealand. And if you were lucky and you had a good agent, you could audition for some stuff in the States. So I did have a good agent, was getting some auditions for the States, but I didn't land anything big. And I was doing okay, and I think if I'd stayed and the momentum had grown, maybe I could have gotten into something interesting, maybe. But what I did is I had a massive breakup with my ex-girlfriend, and I was like, right, this is kind of like make or break point. So she went back to Europe, and I was like, right, well, do I stay now, you know, and carry on as I am, or do I take a chance, go back to the UK, because the UK was producing a lot more television and film. And I was like, well, I've got a bit of a body of work. I've been to, you know, a good drama school. I've had one of the best agents in Australia. Surely this will set me up to now come to the UK and pick up a good agent here and then just start auditioning here. Now, that's what I thought. That's what I hoped. And I ended up moving back with that vision. But with the mind, because I still had my Australian agent, and it's quite funny because the first month I moved back, I got an audition, which I had to then do a web audition for a show called Underbelly in Australia, the second series. So I was auditioning for this guy called Guido Coletti, and I actually got down to the final 2. Yeah. And so I nearly flew back in the first month.
Yeah, you just go, that's it!
And that was like a massive series out there, so it would have been a big part. But anyway, I didn't get it. The other guy got it. But the funny thing was, I was like, right, okay, well, I've still got my Australian agent, and that seems to be going well. Maybe I should just pick up an English agent here and sort of balance the two. Now, as it turned out, I could not pick up an English agent for love nor money. You know, you would send tapes, you would send resumes, you would email. They just weren't reading it, you know, and that's because they were getting such an influx of applications all the time. You probably, more than likely, they weren't even seeing what I was sending. Yeah. And I ended up getting like a really fringe agent who basically was on the precipice of retiring and not really ever had anyone serious on the books. And she ended up getting me some auditions for like adverts, you know, and like if you're an actor, you don't really want to do an advert, but it sort of pays the bills.
Yeah, so it's your bread and butter.
Yeah, so I ended up doing a couple of adverts here. Like, okay, fine, you know, auditions, got those. But I wasn't getting any auditions for series. I wasn't getting any auditions for film. I wasn't even getting any auditions for theatre, you know, and I was in like theatre land. I was like, well, this is, you know, I'm not getting auditions, and you've got to be in the game, you know, you can't. So I was actually going, right, well, this is not going very well. I think I need to go back to Australia because that's where it was going well. You know, if you found something works, go back and do that. Yeah. And I was about to go back, and I went and met my current wife. Yeah. Doing a short film. Yeah. And I was like, okay. Right, maybe I'll have to stay a little bit longer. You know, it's like this. You know, this is a potential life partner here. I was like, okay, and irritatingly, she tracked me, and,
and here we are,
stuck in the UK again. Yeah. So that was the moment, because what had happened behind the scenes then is during that time you had gone to Bristol. We were talking. We had done some D&D again. Yeah. So this is over. This is like this all sort of gestated over a 3 year period.
We made a film.
That's right. We made a film. That's right. Absolutely. And you know, we were still role playing at this point. Wasn't really doing much Warhammer. You weren't doing any Warhammer. No. But my friend George, who I'd used to play with, had got in touch because he found out I was back in the UK, and he said, "Oh, I'm playing Warhammer. Do you want to get back into it again?" And I was like, at this point, you know, I was single just before I'd met Rachel. In fact, I'd started playing probably about 8 months before meeting Rachel again, and I started to build up my army. I got out some old bits. And this is when I had my Emperor's Children army. It was really, really cool. Yeah. And anyway, we started playing, and you know, it wasn't thinking anything of it. I was just playing the game and enjoying it. Went to a couple of tournaments of Warhammer World. And anyway, when I met Rachel, after about a year, I moved in, and I realised at this point, you know, I still had my agent. But I was like, I'm not getting any auditions. Like, this is not going to go anywhere. And this is why I'll come back to why it was potentially a mistake to go to drama school in Australia at the time. Not that it's a mistake now. It is that unless I'd been to one of the big drama schools in the UK, it was quite difficult to get seen for an agent. So if I'd gone to one of the big drama schools here in the UK, it probably would have been easier. Yeah. So what I should have done is probably just stayed in Australia. In terms of an acting point, point of view, stayed in Australia because that's where I trained and I'd already got the good agent there. Hindsight, right? Always 2020. Yeah. So I went, okay, well look, the acting is not going anywhere at any rate that I would like it to. So what I would like to do, you know, I've spent all this time and money going to university studying drama. I've always wanted to do something performance-based, something creative. I love writing, I love, you know, all that jazz. I need to do something. Yeah. You know, I was like, I need to do something. Yeah. And I'd had this idea whilst I was playing the game with George again, because I started to learn the game again, jumping onto YouTube. Yeah. I was like, oh, you know, see if there's any like tutorials on YouTube. So I had to learn how to play again, you know. Yeah. I was like, oh, there's some videos on YouTube, but they're all like, back then there weren't that many channels. There were really not that many at all. There's like Mini Wargaming was there, but Striking Scorpion sort of started out a couple of years before, you know. But there wasn't really anyone else. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. That'd be cool. I reckon I could do that. I just had that thought. Yeah. And that's a problem with me. The minute I have a thought, it will often become something. So I moved in with Rachel, and I sort of went, right. I planted the seed with Rachel. I was like, do you think you'd ever want to, you know, move over to Australia? Because I was thinking in the back of my head, agent, get back on the acting scene. And she was like, no, I love my family too much. I was like, okay. Great. And so I turned around to Rachel one day and I said, right, look, the acting's not happening. I need to do something creative. I've got this idea. Hear me out. And I'd said, I've got this idea. I think I want to create this show on Warhammer where we and potentially then branch out into other things, where we film the game and, you know, get a bunch of good people involved, have good painting and tactics, and we approach it from different angles. And, you know, I basically need the kitchen to do that. Yes. At least once a week. Yeah. And she was like, sure. And I was expecting it to be a no, you know, and you expect it to be a no, but she was like, sure. And I've just moved in at this point. So you're kind of like, you're pushing the boundaries. You gotta, yeah. And she was like, sure. And I was like, okay, good. And so the minute she said yes, I bought the camera and some lights within the 2 weeks. Yeah. I'd already painted up my own army at this point, and I knew I needed someone to film with. And because I'd gotten Joe involved, Beard, I've been teaching him how to paint with his Iron Warriors and teaching him how to play a few months earlier. And he had basically got 1,500 points together at this point. I was like, right, okay, cool. Within 2 weeks, I'd filmed the first one. I'd edited the first one. And I put it up on YouTube as a test. Yes. Just to, this is the funny thing, to learn how to upload a video on YouTube. Sure. That was it. Yep. Now, I'd already had a little bit of luck because when I was 18, I've skipped a couple of bits of my life story. Sure. When I was 18, I'd worked in post-production for a year. And I'd also then, whilst I was living, after I left, came back to the UK, I started working for a technology company. I was running IT, and I learned a bit of web development. I learned how to edit in the post-production job. I learned how to use some cameras. So I had like a weird variety of skills. Yes. That could all sort of
like Liam Neeson.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. I will find you.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, what happens is I deployed this video, I've uploaded it to YouTube, and just to learn how the YouTube process works. And I've just had it on private video, like no one could see this video.
I could.
No, you couldn't see it yet.
I could see it.
Okay, so then it was Beard. He said, "Would you think you should just release it?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" It wasn't that polished. I wasn't even a narration style. I was just trying to, get a video out there, put it together, and have some sort of a format and see what could work. And within that first month, we had gotten approaching 1,000 subs.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh. And the problem is once I'd let, open the tap slightly, it poured. So people wanted more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And so I suddenly found myself having to create videos every week, on time, every time. And it became, it was a challenge, but I'm sure we can go over all of that. But that was basically how it started.
Yeah. It's interesting you touched on the word challenge, because my next question...
Oh, isn't that crazy?
What was the most challenging part of getting it all going?
Well, the most challenging part was working full time.
Yeah.
And then, filming takes a long time. It actually takes about 10 hours to produce one report.
I am aware.
Yeah. So, you're looking at 6 or 7 hours average filming the game. Mm-hmm. And then you're looking at 3 hours average to edit the reports. Yep. And then you've got to upload it on top of that. So, the whole process is actually longer than 10 hours. But your average is around 10 hours. And if you're having to produce, because I'd already quickly been working on a website in the background, and I created on demand very early.
Which was really good, because I remember that, because we used to do everything on YouTube Red.
That's right, yeah.
And then that just disappeared.
It disappeared, and that's right. Yeah.
we luckily had that website.
Yeah.
That was just luck.
It kind of was, but it wasn't. Now, I'll tell you why. I learned very quickly that if you put all of your eggs in someone else's basket and they drop that basket, you've got no eggs.
Yeah.
Do you like that analogy?
Sort of. It's a play on an original. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
That's right.
Yeah.
I thought it was very clever.
No, well, it's the same. It's the same.
Yes,
thing.
but I've given the basket to someone else. You see.
Right.
That someone else was YouTube.
Right, I'm with you. Now, look, carry on, please.
He never gets my quirky little humour, and sometimes I have to explain it. That's the thing.
And that's actually generally when you explain a joke is when it gets funny. Little tip. You should always do that. Explain the joke. Carry on, please.
Okay. So so anyway, I realised I'm basically putting all of my on-demand videos on YouTube, because I started with a website, then I left the website to go to YouTube.
Yeah.
Then we ended up coming back. So I realised if YouTube changed their terms at any point, I would basically on-demand would suddenly disappear. So I was like, that's a dangerous, business strategy, if you want to talk about business. So I was like, that's not a good move.
No. So
I created the website again about a year before, and I've encouraged everyone from YouTube to come over. And as it turned out, a year later, YouTube said, "Oh no, we're dropping paid channels now."
Yeah.
Now they've brought it back, of course. It was a fail-safe which I hoped I never needed, because YouTube was great, the video player and everything was really, really cool. It was nice to have everything in one spot.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, if you literally let another company just run how you release stuff, you're gonna be at risk. And so it was a bit of a fluke, but a bit of a fail-safe at the same time. Creating all of that content, basically whilst I was working full time. With me and Beard initially, I quickly realised, look, I need more people. Now, weirdly, you had gone back to Australia at this point.
I'd been there for about... Yeah, I'd been there for about...
Like a human peanut.
I'd been there for about 14 months, I think, at this stage.
Yeah, you'd gone back.
Yeah.
So, Rachel and I went over for a little holiday.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Went over for a little holiday and met up with you.
The Cronulla Falcon.
That's right, the Cronulla Falcon, that's right.
We told Rachel that there was a giant Australian bird that would pluck children off the beach called the Cronulla Falcon.
Yes.
And I think she believed me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was, because the thing is, so Rachel, my wife, she's terrified, like it's a phobia of birds.
So then
I've had to leave many restaurants, like especially like if you're out in Italy when you're sitting outside, because pigeons have come near, and like I don't know who flaps more, her or the pigeons. But you know, she's gone. That's it. It's off into the vista. You know, I'm like, okay. And I'm not a very nervous person, so I just don't react sharply to anything, you know. Even a loud noise goes off, I sort of like casually look over. I'm just that sort of person. And so when Rachel runs off, it looks like I'm the most uncaring person ever. People are like looking like, what have you said to your wife? I'm like, she's scared of the birds, what do you want me to do? You know, I'm here having my lunch.
I'm trying to enjoy myself.
You know, got a margarita on the go here. So anyway, so I quickly realised, look, I need to get my bros together. Basically, that's what it was. That was the idea.
Yeah.
So I went over to Australia and we spoke to you, and I said, look, I've started this channel. It's called Tabletop Tactics.
Yeah. No, we'd spoken on the phone before.
Oh no, we'd spoken on the phone, but it was like when we physically spoke. Yeah. And you were like, well, maybe I should just come over there. And I'm like, yeah. And that was about 6 months into the channel, basically.
Yeah.
And then you came over, and you got the Shadow Strike Enclave. It was an eBay purchase, wasn't it? And then you ended up obviously building and adding and painting yourself, and I taught you how to play. And really, at that point, the rest is history. You can pretty much go back and look at the progression of the channel on Tabletop Tactics. That's how it started. Really, you, me, and Beard, and then other people sort of started coming on the scene. Rob had just moved back over to the UK about a year after you came. And I'd met Stig, also working with Beard, and it all just sort of came together, really. And yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
That is the journey. You didn't miss anything. Well done.
Thank you.
I know it quite well because I've been here.
So it's probably going to be a really long hobby Voxcast.
Yeah, this one is.
So like, why is Lawrence not? Can he just stop?
No, this is good. I'm enjoying this. This is nice. It's nice, and it's good because it gives like the full flavored background to everyone. Really, This is an
insight. This
is the true history, if you will.
Yes.
So we've talked about kind of like what was the most challenging. We've had all the working full time, uploading everything. Suddenly you've got a schedule you need to work to.
Yeah. Well, I was basically doing 80-hour weeks, and that's not an exaggeration.
No, I know.
It was insane.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But what's been so that was the most challenging thing. But what was the most satisfying thing about setting it up?
The most. For me to date, the most satisfying thing has been employing all of you, actually. Weirdly, that's been the most satisfying thing, because I had a vision that I could get Tabletop Tactics to the point where you can give back. And by give back, as in the minute you employ people, you're giving back. You're creating careers. You're creating, I like to think, hopefully, a really awesome opportunity, an exciting job, something which people want to put their heart into and do. Because I think it's fair to say probably a lot of people do their jobs and they don't enjoy it that much. That was certainly true of me. I've worked loads of jobs, loads of jobs I hated. I've delivered pizzas. I've driven people around on a tricycle, like in Australia.
That was funny.
Pedopod.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so basically it was a milk crate.
Yeah.
It was made out of milk, milk bottles.
He used to cycle around where my apartment was, and I used to see him go past my apartment on his bike, and I'd wave.
Yeah, pedopod.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was basically you just ferry people around. It was kind of like a touristy gimmick thing.
Yeah.
So I've done all sorts of jobs, okay? I've done all sorts of jobs. So the most satisfying moment for me was the minute there were two moments. Obviously, the first moment was where I was able to leave my full-time job so that I could create more content and then get you on board more. And then ultimately the most satisfying point was the move, hiring everyone, but setting up as a proper company as opposed to just being a sole trader. That for me was the most satisfying, because that was the moment where you go, right, well, this is it now. Everyone's got a job. This is a career. We've all got pensions. Everything's in place, and And we're able to now throw ourselves into and ultimately hit the real vision of what I want with Tabletop Tactics, that we cover these different games and that we get to like 5-6 videos a week released, but without compromising on the quality.
Yeah.
You know, because I would never release more just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
It's very important to me that there's a certain quality that goes into every. I'm very finicky that way.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
a perfectionist.
But we all
Yeah.
are in that regard. Like I 100% agree with that. We can't
So
say-
yeah, that's the most satisfying. You know, it's something really cool about it. You know, you get to work with your friends, which is great.
Yeah.
It has its own challenges.
Yeah.
You know, I'm often the bad guy because I have to tell people what to do,
Yeah.
and I'm the bad guy when I'm very lucky all the time, and I'm the arch enemy, overlord on the channel. But you know what? Someone has to be.
Yeah.
And I grew up liking the Sith. So what's up?
Cool. You finished your thought right in the middle of my mouthful of
Yes,
narrative.
yes.
Yeah, but you know, like you say, someone has to be.
Yeah.
I'm the village idiot. Someone has to be.
Someone has to be.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
And you know, I mean, for me, it's not a stretch.
No.
That's just who I am.
Yeah.
Surprise. Awesome. Cool. So look, we have talked a lot about like the channel and all that sort of stuff. Let's talk a little bit more about the armies and stuff that you're interested in, because like me, you play all of the armies on the channel, really.
Yeah.
Depending on the day.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go more back into the game side of things.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, what is your favourite army? We call you the Spider.
Yeah, so I mean,
But-
it's probably common knowledge that, well, maybe not that common knowledge. So I sort of gave myself the nickname,
Yes.
the Spider, didn't I? Do
Yeah,
remember
you
that?
give yourself all your own nicknames.
Well, I've never really had any nicknames. No one ever gave me a nickname.
Sure.
you know-
I've given you lots of names.
You call me lots of things, which you can't mention any of here.
Not one.
But I've never had a nickname that's stuck, you know. And I didn't. The reason I sort of came up with a nickname really is because Beard had got a nickname very quickly, and people seem to like the internet seems to want to call people things. So, and it was kind of natural because Beard was like, well, my Drakari army is called the Void Spiders.
Yeah.
And the Archon is known as the Spider, so it became natural that I'll be the Spider, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I suppose people would think that my favourite army is Drakari. Look, it's right up there.
Yeah.
It is right up there, but it's funnily enough, it's not my favourite army. What I liked about the Drakari the most, especially in the edition that I picked them up, which was 5th, was the play style. It was very, very, very interesting. It had a lot of finesse, especially with things like the Night Shields, which I thought were a really interesting rule, -6 inches to your range. And it used to be a real glass cannon army.
Yeah.
It kind of still is, but weirdly it became really resilient.
Yeah.
You know, the Covens should be resilient, but like Venoms became really resilient because they're -1 to hit, they're 6 wounds, they don't degrade, 5 up invuln, you know, so it became a bit weird, you know. Whereas before it was about not being hit, but if you hit me, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
I really like that concept. Real, like, you know, it's my whole martial arts background. I found combat fascinating, and you know the way you can use tactics on the battlefield or in a fight. And so the Venoms were really, really cool. I loved the models. I loved the range. I did love the fluff. Like they were super evil, and they just embraced it. Okay, well that's really cool. But actually, my first army ever was Blood Angels. So when I got that second edition box set. The first army I'd actually painted for myself, and even the miniatures that I'd collected, because before that was kind of fantasy.
Yeah.
And the miniatures that I'd started to build up where we taught ourselves our own rules, I was painting them as Blood Angels.
Right.
And George was painting his as Ultramarines.
Ah, very good.
And I loved the Blood Angels immediately. I was
Yeah.
like, these are vampires. And, you know, basically I'm a very tall, pale person.
Yes.
I can relate.
Yeah, sure, yeah, again.
I don't drink blood. I wouldn't be publicly allowed to admit.
Yeah, if you
I
did. If you did, but you don't.
No.
No.
So, I just love the Blood Angels. And if I was going to pick a favourite army, I then sort of discovered the Grey Knights. And I then I discovered Elder and Ulthwé. For a very long time, my favourite army was Ulthwé, after the Blood Angels. Then I super loved the Grey Knights, but they were all metal models, so it's before I was kind of out of the hobby at that point. Then I obviously discovered Emperor's Children, which I super love. I really love the really evil factions when they're just there's almost no redeeming quality.
Yeah.
Because it just is what it is. You know,
Yeah.
there's no shade of grey there. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
And I like the Emperor's Children because it was a bit unique, snowflakey. Not many people played them. You know, people do World Eaters or they do Death Guard, you know, and again, quite an interesting play style. But if I was to give my absolute favourite faction, it's probably going to be either Grey Knights or Flesh Tearers.
Right.
I know Flesh Tearers aren't Blood Angels, technically.
No.
But the thing is, I didn't know about the Flesh Tearers when I was growing up because there wasn't much fluff etched out in terms of Flesh Tearers.
No.
And I suppose if I was going to go for one, it would probably be Flesh Tearers.
Yeah. Okay.
So I've gone full circle.
So we've come full circle to the evil version of the Blood Angels.
Well, they're not evil. They're flawed.
They're flawed.
So I love characters who are flawed. I
see.
think they're more interesting.
Yeah.
I do love Gellerman though, and the Ultramarines
Yeah.
because of Artemis.
He's great.
The Gaius War really brought my love up for the Ultramarines. I really got on board with it.
Roman Centurions.
Yeah, they're absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, I love 40k, and the
Yeah.
thing is, I actually love all of the factions. I can tell you a little secret. There is a faction which I like the least.
Oh, tell me.
But the thing is, the internet hates me anyway, so that's fine. Orcs.
Yeah.
Now, the reason is, I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Since the Hobby Voxcast, it's not that I don't like orcs. It's that in the 40k universe, they are up until now, they're sort of going a little bit darker with them now. They've been, for me, the faction, and it's funny because they're kind of iconic because they were released with the Space Eldar and the Space Marines together. I don't find them as iconic in 40k because they're quite cartoony and the fluff is quite, well, I just believe it, so it will work. It's the thing which stretches me the most, whereas like the Chaos versus the Imperium, that darkness, and then you've got this ancient race, the Eldar, you go, okay, which are basically space elves, let's be honest, but they seem to kind of fit, and the Tyranids fit, okay, this horrible thing coming from the eastern fringe of the galaxy, and then you've got the Necrontyr, the old, the ancient race. You go, okay, this all kind of...
You missed out on the Tau.
Well, then you've got the Tau, which are the new race, the new upstart race, and they've got this interesting technology. It's really cool, but then you've got the Orcs, and you've got little grots running around, and for me, it kind of always broke the immersion a little bit of making it grim dark. But then you read the fluff with the Orcs,
and they are grim.
Yeah, then it's really cool, but then they've always had this weird sort of
comedic.
Yeah, this comedic edge on this guy crumpy. I don't know. It's a funny one. They've never quite see what I would have done. If I was to rewrite 40k, and I wouldn't rewrite much of it because I think most of it is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But I would have had the Orcs, something like the Orcs. I would have. But I wouldn't have made them Orcs. I would have made them some other sort of alien race, which are savage and warlike, and have perhaps a more basic technology. They've only just discovered warp technology, and that was because they were invaded and they've stolen it, and they've. I would have something going on like that, rather than have the comedic sort of edge, which I think that they've had for a lot of editions. I know that there's going to be loads of you, especially Orc fans, which disagree with me and probably will like the comic relief. Yeah. Probably like it, and I get that. I can get on board with it. I thought the narrative we did was really fun.
Yeah, it was really fun.
But they take out that grim dark. For me, somehow. So they're my least favourite.
They're your least favourite.
I know you didn't ask me
Didn't ask you that at all.
But it gives you some
You're ruining
context.
my questions.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. Let's see if I can salvage this now. So, right. So you're probably thinking about Flesh Tearers. Now, you've been talking a lot about this.
Yeah.
So you are building an army in the background.
I have started that.
You've started that. You've got the transfers and all that sort of stuff. So, competitively as an army, where do you think they sit?
Flesh Tearers? Blood Angels are in a very interesting spot right now. Flesh Tearers are not as good as Blood Angels. Their chapter tactic is just not as good as a +1 charge. I mean, it's nice, which sucks a little bit. But I'm ultimately doing the Flesh Tearers. Yes, I will play them competitively, but they're like my passion army. So,
Sure.
you know, I want to use them narratively. I want to use them for regular reports. So I want to have some variety, although the irony is, of course, that I'm building a tournament list with them first.
Yeah.
But mainly because I like to go to events, and I'm already booked in for 4 GTs this year. So I won't get to use the Flesh Terrors this year. Because they won't be done.
They just won't be ready.
I might be able to start using them mid-year, and I guess I might switch to them depending on how I do with the Grey Knights.
Yeah, sure.
I ain't going to be using the Grey Knights for the first half of this year anyway. So yeah, I think Blood Angels are right up there. They're not Iron Hands Imperial Fists good.
No.
But one of the reasons I like them is they are basically an assault-based marine army,
Which I love as well.
Yeah, and they require more finesse to use. You know, it's not sit in a castle around my auras and re-roll everything.
Yeah.
Sure, there's the elements of the re-rolls. You know, you've got your Sandguard going on and Death Company and so forth. But you've got to make it into combat.
Yeah.
You've got to move well. You've got to know when to redeploy your units. You've got to know where to deep strike. There's a lot more finesse to it. You've got to know which screen to clear to get to the heart of the enemy. As you know, when you're playing a shooting, moving, you know, Hal's moving castle style army, it doesn't require as much finesse. The only finesse really comes down to your target priority and making sure that you're up to date on the missions. So Blood Angels, they're definitely upper tier. I wouldn't call them top tier. I wouldn't call Grey Knights top tier either, but they're much more interesting now that the new rules have come out with Psychic Awakening. So I think they're probably, let's just call them upper tier. I don't want to rank them. You know, they're in the upper spectrum.
What would you change about the army in that case to make them a bit more bitey, rules wise?
The problem you've got is Overwatch. A lot of Overwatch hurts. You've got some ways around it with Blood Angels, which is great. Yeah. The other thing is, I mean, Sanguinary Guard are almost criminally cheap now. So
yeah.
you can, to be fair, they've gotten some really good buffs. But the thing with Blood Angels or any assault army is always, what's the balance between shooting, range support, and assault? Blood Angels currently don't have anything which can kind of do a dual role very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's what I mean by that is something that can perhaps fight in combat and also deliver withering firepower. So you'd usually think of like a dreadnought at that point.
Yeah, well,
I think the Invicta Warsuits
is as close as you're going to get.
And hence why I'll probably run 3 Warsuits in my own list, because they've got a bit of anti-tank duty, they've got some firepower, but again, they don't have like, you know, sort of las cannon hitting, plasma executioner style hitting firepower. Yeah. So the dreadnoughts are basically the problem. Because dreadnoughts currently aren't the ones with a dedicated combat dreadnought isn't necessarily, that competitive at the moment. What I would like is a hybrid one which could shoot and also have a great cannon. You could look at something like a Leviathan with 1 Hellstorm cannon, but again, you can't really deliver him unless you put him in one of those drop pods. It becomes very expensive. They're lacking. It's kind of they're lacking some units to help support the assault with good firepower. So what you end up doing is just going all in. I'm just going to go all in on the assault, and you can run things like 3 units of Sanguinary Guards and a unit of Death Company, or you could go 1 big blob of Death Company, 1 blob of Sanguinary Guards, and then I'm going to play with things like Incursor spam and then add Warsuits on top of that. Yeah. You have an army which basically starts 9 inches away from you, and you're like, what's up? What are you going to do? You know, like my whole army's got +1 to wound you in combat. Yeah. Death by 1,000 cuts style thing. So look, I like it. I like it. That's kind of the direction.
A bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Very nice. So we've talked about your favourite army. We've talked about how the company started. We've learnt a lot more about you as well. So we have recently started doing D&D, and we've touched about how we got into that, obviously, as well. And that was kind of the next question. Okay. So we're going to skip that one, but we are going to go into this is I've asked some of the other guys this, and this has torn them right down the middle.
Has it?
Yes.
Crazy.
Do you have a favourite game that we play here, or maybe a game that we don't play here that you enjoy?
Chess.
Chess. Is that your favourite game? Okay. Well, it could have been.
I did really enjoy chess.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I've always enjoyed strategy and Tactics.
Yeah.
So Warhammer 40,000 is definitely, and I'm really interested in Age of Sigmar as well, and we are covering Sigmar this year. So that's an inevitability. I'm sure I'm going to really enjoy that. But Warhammer 40,000 has always been very close to my heart. I've always enjoyed it. I've always been extremely frustrated by how unbalanced it is.
Yeah.
But it is getting better and better and better and better. And yes, I know Marines have suddenly gone, oh no, you're not balanced, don't be silly.
Yeah.
But, I'm very confident that will all change in the future. So that's up there. But Dungeons and Dragons is probably my favourite game ever. And that's because there is a certain experience with Dungeons and Dragons. Like I love the narrative side of 40k, and you can get close to it with doing a narrative game. You can have immense fun.
Yeah.
And like if we start doing some campaigns again, where we build up like the battle honors and experience for our armies and stuff, that'd be really, really cool.
Yeah.
But there's something about creating a character. It's the actor in me. You create a character, you put him on the table, you realise him in front of a group of other people, and you immerse yourself in a different world. Like you want to talk escapism.
Yeah.
It's better than any computer game you can ever play. You get the right DM, you get the right group, the right atmosphere. You can just have these incredible moments, and they become like memories. Do you remember the time I drew my sword against that dragon? And it flinched.
Yeah.
Because it knew that it had come across prey, which was actually a hunter.
Yeah.
You just get these moments and you're like, that's so cool.
It's really...
So I think D&D is my favourite game. I'm really, really happy that we're doing it again now on the show, on Tabletop Tactics, and that it's also being released weekly, which is great.
Yeah.
So I think that's my favourite. If there's a game which I'm not playing currently, which I really want to, it is Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
Because obviously I love fantasy and I love all the miniatures. There are loads of other games I would like to cover as well. Yeah. But for the moment, that's D&D. Yeah. That's my favourite.
D&D. Okay, cool. Well, I think this has been the longest one we've done.
That's crazy.
It's been really good.
It's because you didn't stop speaking.
No, it was mainly me.
Yes.
But I will ask one final question. It's almost like a final thoughts segment. Like, what's your vision? Where are we headed? What's next for Tabletop Tactics, as it were, without giving too much away of any secret and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I gave away quite a few secrets.
You did?
On the chef.
Yeah. And it's we've kind of we've been quite I want to say lucky's not necessarily the right word, but we have created something which has become really successful, and we've put a lot of work into it and stuff, and it's something that I'm really proud of. I'm sure you definitely are as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's next in your creative vision?
So we've started it now with Dungeons and Dragons, so we've got that show back on. It will never replace Warhammer 40,000, and in fact, you'll actually see it's an additional video.
Yeah.
So it's not actually, you're still getting, especially for on demand, you're actually still getting the same amount of battle reports and tactical reports that you were before. Plus, you'll now be getting narrative reports. So that's the next part of the vision. So we do have narrative reports scheduled to be filmed roughly every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And it will alternate between on demand here and to Freeview. And that will be quite cool because I love doing the narratives.
Yeah, me too.
It's a great opportunity to get writing. You've written a couple of them now. And it's a great opportunity to get the voice acting out. And it's just cool to create a story.
Yeah.
And to craft the cinematic and to put that, to score it and everything. And I know a lot of you guys really enjoy it. We really enjoy producing them. But the problem is it actually takes often 3 days to make a single one.
Yeah.
So I have to be very, very strategic on when they're going to go in the schedule, because obviously I can't compromise releasing the regular battle reports because a lot of you guys like that.
Yeah.
And I can't compromise on doing a tactical report because, again, a lot of you guys like that. So it becomes this sort of balance. And the thing is, I've seen a few comments where people are like, oh, well, you do so many tacticals, but what about the narratives? And I'm like, well, the difference is I can film a tactical in a day.
Yeah.
It's just a time thing, guys.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, because when we do narrative, we do narrative.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh well, you know, we're just going to play a regular game in 40k and
No,
call it a narrative mission.
We write all the
narrative,
scripts, and then we play the game. The game takes longer because of how we film it. We we generally make up our own mission parameters as well.
Yep.
They'll sometimes be based on stuff, but then we'll put our own spin on it.
Yep.
Then we do all the voiceover stuff.
Yep.
And then the editing takes a bit longer.
Ages and
really long time to do all that sort of stuff. So I love that. My favorite day is narrative day.
Yeah.
Like, I like it. Yes.
We've got them in the schedule now.
Yeah.
So like you actually will see them more regularly. You actually will. And what will happen is Freeview will get a narrative, say like every 2 months basically.
Yeah.
And On Demand will get, it will alternate between the two, and then Freeview will get like one Tactica a month. Whereas On Demand you get it every week.
Yeah.
So if you're On Demand, actually now you're basically getting 3 times as much content,
which is
crazy.
It
used to be twice as much. Now you're getting 3 times as much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, look, vision wise, it's the narratives. They will now come out fairly regularly, which is great, you know. And then obviously Sigmar is the next thing. If we can get Sigmar to a really, really strong place where, and I want to do Sigmar in addition to, right? So you'll end up getting a Sigmar report a week, which would be really, really cool. That's the next evolution. So we get to that point, then we've got D&D, we've got Sigmar, we've got Warhammer 40,000. At that point, I think we'd probably be ready to branch out into some of the other specialist games, which I know a lot of you guys have asked for. Like I've got ideas of doing a Blood Bowl season.
Yeah.
We do it Madden style, you know, like to commentate.
Yeah. I don't even want to play, I just want to commentate. That's all I want to do.
I've got some really, really good ideas of things that we can do in the future. Live streaming is a potential. However, I think the timing wise is always tricky with live streaming, so I'm not committing to that yet. But there are some big changes. Well, I say big changes. There are some really cool additions to the regular reports we're filming with the overhead cam, which I've got planned, which you'll probably start seeing over the next month maybe. I've had a couple of technical issues with it, but it does work, and it's really, really, really cool. And it will only improve the quality. And then I've got some new title cards coming. So basically, a lot of the stuff I'm doing in the background is I'm constantly improving the titles, the graphics, the shooting techniques, the lighting, you know, everything to make it look as nice as possible for you guys. I'm working on a new mic system at the moment. I've got them all set up. I just need to do a test with all 5 of us. For cast of players. I've got it set up for 2 at the moment. So yeah, look, there's lots of stuff coming. Vision wise, the sky's the limit for shows, and you know, I'm really happy to have all of you guys along for the ride. I think we're going to have a lot of fun for many years to come.
Good, excellent. Well, look, on that note, I think we will leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
No, okay. And you're welcome as well, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed that bit of an insight into the Spider, Lawrence, aka the director. I certainly did. And we will see you very shortly. I've been the B-Bone. We'll see you in the next Hobby Voxcast, which will be me potentially interviewing myself.